The January 30th, 2024 work study session of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mitchell,
Present.
Vice President Herman,
Present.
Director Mason,
Present.
Director Revelinsky,
Present.
Director Atkins.
Thank you. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, could you please present the agenda, and have there been any changes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There has been one change to the agenda where the resolution document was added.
Okay. If all directors are in agreement, the agenda will be approved by general consent. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Saltzman, I think you had some special work.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and the Board of Directors this evening. Welcome, and welcome to our cabinet and to our other public members that are here. Tonight, we're going to review the budget and the guiding principles. We're going to identify any reductions for the 24-2025 school year if there's any. And the board tonight will participate in an interactive activity. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Miss Andy Tress. Miss Andy Tress, thank you.
Andy, welcome. You are doing our work study session, section 4.01, budget development and fiscal outlook. So take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saltzman, President Mitchell, Board of Directors. Tonight, we're having our board budget study session for review. We are going to be reviewing our overall budget deficit, our related guiding principles, community and staff feedback that we've received around our development budget process, and timelines. We'll identify areas for potential reductions, and we'll have an opportunity for board interaction and board interaction and consideration and implications on those reduction areas and discussion and next steps. As we look at building our budget for the next year, we need to look at where we started looking at this year's 23-24 operating budget. Our original budget was budgeted as a deficit of $4.3 million as we went into the new year. As we base our expenditures on looking at our activity for the next, as we go throughout the year, we provide updated information overall. We're looking at updating our revenue and expenditures and looking at a projected deficit or our expenditures exceeding our revenues of about $3 million. This is definitely a better outlook than we started at the beginning of the year. And this is primarily due to the fact that we have additional enrollment than we originally budgeted during our adoption. We had about 130 students that were higher than our original budget overall. When we look at building our budget and working towards adopting a budget for next year, we're looking at what we need to do to manage through the process throughout this year. And as I said in our previous board meetings, we needed to look at possible reductions for about $3 to $5 million. We're refining that process, refining that target, and trying to understand where that, where and what that needs to look like. We look at our projected revenues for this year and looking at what we anticipate to increase of about $12.8 million in revenues. And this is based on an updated enrollment that we finalized this month. And I'll go into details on the next slide on what that looks like going forward. Looking at how we project our expenditures in the beginning of this process to estimate our overall expenditures for next year, we're estimating staffing costs at an increase as our implicit price deflator increases for the cost of living adjustment, and maintenance level or an IPD increase cost of living adjustment for our MSOCs as well. With that, we can see that expenditures would exceed revenues by approximately $6.1 million. We do anticipate a planned spend down of fund balance of $1.7 million. And there's two kind of primary reasons for that. One is that we ended with a higher beginning fund balance than prior year, as well as that we have curriculum adoptions that we need to implement in future years to manage those adoptions throughout the next year, that we will be spending one-time cost on to develop those curriculum needs. With that, I'm recommending that we make reductions of approximately $4.4 million in the next year as we build this overall process. As we look ahead at that outlook and looking at this estimated for this year and the estimated 3 years out, we are anticipating slightly increase in enrollment. And there's based on primarily two things. One, based on what happened this year and where we're at from prior years. So this year, we budgeted in between our low and medium projections from our consultant, Les Kendricks, as a conservative approach. What happened at the beginning of the year is that our enrollment came in higher and slightly higher than our medium projections for this year. And so we've updated our estimates to use the medium projections from our consultant for this year, which anticipates slightly increasing enrollment overall. We are assuming at this point in time no significant legislative changes to our funding model. With that also assuming estimates of $3 to $5 million in reductions, and we believe that we will manage this primarily through attrition, materials, supplies, and operating costs, or otherwise I would call MSOCs. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this does assume that staffing cost increases will be based on the implicit price deflator. And that rate, that IPD rate, was developed during last year's budget session and will be updated as we go out for the process for this year in this legislative session. And what that looks like as a percentage of our overall total expenditures. So what I want to highlight here is that we adopted a budget of about 6.4% ending fund balance, and we ended at about 8.8% ending fund balance. And that's primarily due to the fact that we had staffing cost savings from our reduction plan last year in the June timeframe as we let go of staff. And that process did a great job of moving what we need to do for this year as a less of an impact. As I said earlier, we anticipate reductions of about $4.4 million, and that's just approximately 1% or just slightly over 1% of our total overall expenditures. And what you can see here on that blue line is that blue dotted line is that 5% minimum fund balance, which is our board policy. On the yellow line, or the line with the diamonds, that shows you where our fund balance will be if we make reductions in the 24-25 fiscal year of approximately $4.4 million. The green line with squares, it shows you where our fund balance would be if we don't make any reductions going forward. And what I want to highlight, in that 25-26 fiscal year, we would be at 3.9% below our minimum fund balance of 5% of overall expenditures. So as we've started this budget process, there's a lot of feedback we're getting and a lot of opportunities to get feedback overall throughout the process. We've had weekly cabinet sessions, which had really been about defining the range, understanding the range, and prioritizing and streamlining our supports as we go through and develop a plan. We've engaged our union leaders as well, specifically with our EEA, and we're working with our other union leaders as we go throughout. We've engaged our administrators and gotten feedback from them, as well as given them updates and guiding updates around where we're at and looking for potential reductions as we move forward. We created a new committee, which has had great engagement, and that consists of our professional technical group and our administrator group to get ideas and provide input for potential areas and feedback of what we can do differently or what we can look at for this fiscal year. We've also revamped our fiscal advisory council, and we have met twice this year, and we will have 3 additional sessions as we go throughout the budget development process. Again, we have a few other engagement activities planned throughout the year, which involves engaging our President's Council, getting community and staff feedback with a survey, providing an in-person meeting for our community as well to get feedback through that process, as well as getting our CRC or Community Resource Center staff as well, let them know where we're at with our overall budget, and also getting feedback from them. And they've had the opportunity to provide anonymous feedback as well. As we move on and move forward throughout the process, one of the main things we've been doing this year is reviewing all open positions. And that's really primarily to manage this process through attrition as much as possible. We reviewed and assessed our enrollment assumption. And as I previously mentioned, we will be using the medium. I'm recommending we use the medium projections from our consultant for this year. Tonight, we're having our board budget workshop to get feedback and engagement from you all tonight. Again, we've had those other budget advisory meetings and council meetings to get community engagement, and we plan to have other. And if we need, we will have a reduced educational program in that April timeline. Tonight, you will also have an opportunity to discuss and provide feedback, discuss and have an opportunity to approve a board resolution to direct Dr. Saltzman to build a reduction plan for this year. And this primarily is due to following our past practices and being as a conservative approach throughout this process. So as we built reduction and thought about areas of reduction throughout this year, we kind of went back to our guiding principles from last year, got feedback on them and see if we needed to revisit any items. But what stuck out to us still is that we needed to preserve student services and the services that greatly impact students at the core. And so that was one of our guiding principles. And I will say to this, these aren't in any rank order. These are just priorities that we believe that we need to be making our decisions on and building a plan for. We will be guided by Tier 1 instruction and the strategic plan. We will consider regulatory, legal, and contractual requirements, as well as spacing needs. And we will also consider consolidating and reorganizing work to increase our efficiencies overall. So as that is kind of our primer for our activity, we are going to do an exercise tonight and a gallery walk process. So each of you will go to a poster station, and you will have 5 to 7 minutes to walk through the poster station, ask questions about it, give feedback, give us prioritization as anything else that we should consider throughout this process. Yellow dots will be areas where you want us to reconsider and consider as we go through this process and start to develop this plan. And red dots will be strongly reconsider, and these will be items that you want us to prioritize in keeping if things change or if we have other options that we could consider when we build that plan. And you will have 5 to 7 minutes at each of those 5 to 7 minutes at each of those posters, and we'll have a table capped at each of them. That will be Shelley Botten, as well as Chad Golden, Mike Gunn, the regional, so Pete Meiser, Kathy Woods, and Larry Fleckenstein, and Peter Scott and Dr. Scott helping us out tonight. Again, go ahead and grab the yellow and red dots, which are there for you at that back table overall. And again, we'll have 5 to 7 minutes and walk around, and I'll let you know when to move to the next station.
Can we ask some questions before we? Is that okay? The discussion's actually at the end, if that's okay? Or do you want to ask just high level questions? Okay, I can wait. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll have closest to you. And the yellow and red dots are over there at the back table. All right, we have about 1 more minute and then we can switch stations. If we could switch to your next poster station, please, and we'll go in this direction clockwise. I had to make sure. We'll have about 2 more minutes and then we'll rotate. All right, thank you. We can rotate to the next poster, please. We'll do our final rotation. Head and do our final rotation. It's not working. We'll have about 2 more minutes to wrap it up. All right, 1 more minute and then we'll wrap it up. All right, if you could head back to your seats, we'll start back up in about 30 seconds. Thank you so much for your feedback. This was such a great process to get the board's feedback on our overall potential area for reductions. We also want to have kind of a general a general board discussion as a group as a whole to talk about your priorities overall and any additional questions that you may have and key areas for us for consideration as we build and adopt and build this budget plan for the next school year.
So anybody want to begin with discussion? No, Caroline's at some point, so Caroline or Jen. Go ahead.
No, mine are more general, so I think.
Mine are pretty
Okay.
Politeness, so lovely.
No, I think not to be overly redundant, I just want to thank the staff for going through and providing us some very thoughtful getting the feedback that has already been collected and really going through, as I've said before, with a sort of a scalpel level. I think this year we're in obviously we're in a much better place than last year. And starting out, I want us to continue this process because I thought some of the reductions that we're talking about, I would love to see us analyze those and get those every year if we can. So really taking a look at the budget on an annual basis, seeing where we can tighten that up and do that going forward as a plan. So I think that's where I'll leave it, because I think these have really been thought out. And I do like what seems to be a common concern on if we are able to do some building back of the budget, just some areas that we could put those funds, fingers crossed. But I appreciate our assumptions. I really do feel like fiscally it will serve us if we are conservative going forward and planning ahead and protecting the student experience in the classroom as much as possible. Thanks.
You said it so well. Yeah, I would just concur with everything Director Herman said. This is a great process, and I appreciate the explanations. They're very thorough and helps us understand the process that you've been walking through for a bit here. And as I looked at some of the reductions, some of the things that jumped out on me were student health and safety, I guess, is a way to categorize that. I know we kind of have a benchmark of post-COVID numbers, but I feel like, we are technically kind of through COVID, I think, it's going to be with us forever. Well, maybe. But my point, I guess, is that the health and wellness of students, I think, is still recovering a little bit. And I know we've seen dramatic reductions in misbehavior on campuses, but I also want to make sure that we're still, we're not loosening too much, I guess, in those areas, with health assistants and nurses and campus safety and things like that. And you folks know the details much better. So I just share my concern knowing that you know the right thing to do when it comes.
Well, and that helps us prioritize overall too, as we go through the budget process. Yes.
Thank you. I think this is an emotional exercise, certainly, and it gives me a lot of discomfort. I think if it were possible, I would love to be able to separate the items that are that represent reductions in capacity as opposed to actual cutting. If we have a kind of an estimate or a cushion in there and we're just kind of tweaking the estimate, I would like to kind of consider those separately from areas where we are actually making like actually cutting and reducing spend. That would really help me, I think, a lot. And I certainly would appreciate more time, certainly. Thanks.
I don't know. Keep going.
Good.
Okay. I guess I want to say thank you too, and for everybody. I a different discussion, but I appreciate when you said some of our savings, the cuts, but maintaining some of that fund balance is for future adoption. So keeping it at 7.8 next year, which is still 2.8 higher than our board policy. But if we make some changes, then we wouldn't be all the way down to the 6, but maybe we don't need to do 4.4 to keep us at 7.2. And because next year is also potentially it is when the legislature is no longer session and there may be more buckets. And with the discussion that we had this weekend about capital gains and where that's really going to go, and some other conversations that MSOC potentially next year, that I just really wonder if 4.4 needs to be there, or because again, I concur with Director Mason about some of these positions that we might be taking back to pre-COVID was pre-COVID where we should have been, or where we should be. And so I really do wonder about a medium point, the padding, the stuff that's just discretionary that we're tightening up versus the attrition that is good attrition. I really think that some of the stuff is easier and some of the stuff maybe we wait is where I'm sitting. And so that's just where on that slide 6 that I just really wonder where that medium is. So I'd be really curious what the feedback is from the community. And so that's just where I'm thinking tonight.
Thank you for your feedback. So kind of what I heard, just to summarize from the board, was talking about prioritizing safety and health services, as well as looking at it. Should we hold on some of the reductions and possibly spend down our fund balance more as we adopt this process and see what the legislature looks like in the next biennium with a longer session overall. And so that's what I heard as a feedback. So I really do appreciate that.
I don't know how anybody else is feeling about my suggestion, but
I was going to ask Dr. Golden if he had a rough estimate of attrition last year in terms of teaching positions and retirements and resignations. I know it was sort of within normal range, but I think a little bit higher than
It was higher than normal, and we attribute that to the incentive we provided. We see anywhere from on a 60 on the low end to 80 plus for teachers. On a normal year, we were 100 plus with the incentive we had. We are seeing less and we're getting fewer questions this year. And we think that's because the people that were close went last year.
That makes sense. Thank you. And in the plan, the reduction plan that you have laid out, how many, I guess, how does it equate to positions? Like if we're saying we're hoping we can get through.
Yeah, so there's 11 certificated staff, and I think it's 8. There were some that were funding shifts, so it's 23.4 in total, but about 4.4 of those are moving to different funding sources, the
Right.
capital levy.
Okay.
So 8 in classified staff and 11 in certificated.
So about 19,
In
20,
total,
something in that range. And we had 60 to 80. So that really helps frame, that's a lot of people and money that potentially would be leaving the district, and giving us some flexibility.
Yeah, I with certificated, we tend to see more of that attrition than we do with the classified. But we still see attrition, but it's a position by position piece.
And then for I have another question. So for so we had a special meeting about this time last year where that's when we did the major reduction last year, where we started the process, was this February timeframe last year. But we have thankfully, we're very fortunate compared to some of our neighbors that the good work that this district did last year has put us in a much better position than our neighbors, which I'm just so very thankful for. But if then we get to new business and with that resolution, if we decide not to move forward with the resolution today, does that mean that this work can't continue? Or does this mean that if we don't have it, the cleaning up, this is for the community, some of this other work can happen, attrition can happen, it's just some of those cuts we might have to use.
It doesn't mean we can't continue to build our budget. It's a conservative approach and to follow the process we did last year. And that's what I recommended. But again, it doesn't mean we can't move forward with developing our budget, looking at options from our community, having the community engagement that we discussed all around. So
Thank you. Any other questions for this point? Okay. So thank you, Amy.
okay,
So I'm going to move us just to the new business to make it official.
perfect. Thank you so much.
So I'm just going to do a little preamble here so time to time, we do have new business at special meetings. Usually when there's an urgency to what needs to be done that is away from a regular meeting. So we have 2 items tonight. The first is the discussion and potential adoption of a resolution for the reduction plan The second is a paraeducator agreement. And just again, this February 13th is our next regular meeting. So that's why these two things are sort of coming to tonight, as well as it was our plan it was our process last year. So everything sort of came together. So Andy, if you could please just sort of give us a brief intro to the resolution.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So this resolution directs Dr. Saltzman to build a reduced educational program that would be presented if needed, if there was a need, as an abundance of caution, in the April 23rd regular board meeting.
Okay, so are there any questions to the resolution, or any discussion to the resolution? Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about, and this could come from perhaps another director, even with more experience, resolutions themselves, it's a public statement from the board, obviously, but it sounds as though the work itself can really continue. I'll just say for my fellow board members, I appreciate the fact that there is sort of this statement of this is the direction that we're going. I want to make sure that there's no surprises, that and hopefully the public is aware, the people I've talked to, they understand that this year there were going to be some cuts, but I just want to make sure that that is completely known, that we're working on this and hopefully we don't need it. So I guess that's more of a statement than a question, but if there's any feedback on what a resolution means to you or that I would be interested in hearing.
And I think Dr. Saltzman raised.
I'm gonna let Andy
Okay.
answer.
Again, it just, in this instant, it is a conservative approach directing and communicating to our community as well as to Dr. Saltzman that we are developing a plan and being consistent with our process last year. And so again, it's a consistency piece, a conservative approach overall.
And I think for the public and for the board, we're working on this budget every day. And if we could find certain things that we can do, certainly not last year from 24 to 4 today, we're going to still work on this. And by April or March even, we could say, hey, we found this, we found that, we get some input from the community, we got some input even from tonight. I see the notes taken. But I will tell you that we spend every Monday, we spend Tuesday because we're in Olympia, we spend that 90 minutes first on budget. So we are shaping this as, from where we were last year to where we are this year, even how we're going to go into next year. So I think for the public, and you talk about resolution, great question, is this is not finite tonight. And we're going to continue working on it. And great statements by Ms. Mason and others about where we were last year with attrition and where we are now. And sometimes you get more retirements even in May and April that you hear about as well. So it helps.
Any other questions?
I'd like to share my thoughts. So first of all, I take the request of a reduced educational program very seriously. This is, the board is being asked to potentially reduce positions, and these are people's livelihoods. I am not convinced, looking at the numbers, looking at our fund balance, that we are in a position that we need to move forward with this at this time. I would like to actually, I appreciate the caution with how the budget is developed and your conservative approach, but I also feel like if we could postpone or get a few more months of actual expenditures and revenues, and also potentially even the outcomes of the legislative session, that would help shape and frame the picture a little bit more concretely. The last time we did this was in 2011. It's not something I feel like we need to do every year because we're a couple $1 million off. That's a lot of money, but when you're looking at the overall size of our budget, it really isn't. And it could really just go one way or another depending on what the legislative session does. There's not a lot of hope, but there might be, more retirements. We just don't know, I guess. And some of it we won't know in the end, which kind of happened last year while we started with a higher fund balance. But last year we had multiple factors, financial factors influencing the budget at the same time. We had a decrease in regionalization, which we don't this year. We had a decrease in enrollment, which we don't this year. We had the elimination of our ESSER funds, which are still gone this year. And we had higher inflation and we weren't certain where that was going to go. And the economy's in a much better place. Inflation is coming down. And I'm just not convinced that we need to take this step tonight as for a reduced educational program resolution. So with that, I would like to actually move that we postpone this resolution to a future board meeting.
So what I heard is you would like to table this to a future meeting. Because I think table is the correct wording
Thank
for
you.
Robert's rules.
Okay, I'd like
Um,
to table this. Thank you.
Yes, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to table this to another meeting to be determined, and seconded. All those in favor say yay.
Do we do
Oh,
additional?
Is there any discussion? Thank you. Thank you. I actually have that on here, discussion.
I would like to actually make one other note that I missed. The last time in 2011, when we, I don't know if we did like the pre-resolution or we just approved the actual reduction. So this is kind of like a two-step process that we did last year, and it's being brought back again because that's what we did last year. I don't know what we did in 2011, but I would like to say that we actually voted on the actual reduced educational program. It was adopted on April 19th. So we do have time to sort of see where things go, I feel like.
And again, the intent was to do, if there was a need to do the reduced educational program in April board meeting.
Yeah.
At that point in time.
I do have some concerns about what the message it sends to our community and our staff, that we're being so aggressive early when we don't know as much.
Yes.
If I could ask a clarifying question, my thought to that would be if this were to pass tonight, I would still want the message to go out that it is perhaps being tabled, but not.
The work is still.
It's not
continuing.
being eliminated.
Yes, because I think I just want to make sure that there is enough heads up to the community that this is the direction we're going. And again, the concept of no surprises. So timing wise, I guess if we were to table it, it doesn't necessarily mean April, although that would be.
Correct. That is correct.
So it actually, we still could be talking about it a time before then.
Correct.
Okay.
And I thank you for that, because I sort of had in my mind, we have a community session on the 15th, legislative session at the end of February. We will have a fuller picture then about what the current at that point is. So that was sort of my maybe potentially future February.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
then. So we would still have the February community meeting.
Correct. We will
Correct.
still be having February
Okay.
community meeting. We will continue all of our communication and budget development plan. That will not change. Again, it's still getting an opportunity to get student and well, to get feedback from a survey as well. So.
Because I think too, that just I appreciate Director Mason's comments about, we have had resolutions in the past to approve the package versus the resolution to pre-work. And so it is sort of the work is still going to happen. We always had, for years have had community input, fiscal advisory input when we come to budget. And so it is just sort of, the work is going to happen. We just don't have a resolution that says, hey, we're going to make reductions. It's just, we are going to make reductions because this community, we are so thankful, trusts us. They vote for our levies. A majority votes for our bonds. I mean, they do trust us. And so I think that this message and the fact that we have these meetings, regardless if there's a resolution saying we might cut some things, is I think okay. And so any other further comments? Okay, so then we have a motion and second. So all those in favor say yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Or
Aye.
whatever it is, aye, thank you. And all those opposed say no. Okay, then hearing it, to table the resolution has passed.
Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, thank you. And now we're moving on to our second item for the new business, which I would just like to really thank Dr. Golden and Andy and their teams as well as the para leadership for this agreement that you're bringing forth tonight. Usually something like this would go on the consent agenda of a regular board meeting, but again, since our regular board meeting is not until February 13th, just having some urgency so that HR can do what they need to do for the paras. So Chad, would you like to introduce the agreement?
Yeah, thank you. This is proposal for you to approve the collective bargaining agreement for the Everett Association of Paraeducators. The association ratified in January 12th, I believe. And by a pretty good margin, 78%. So
That's great.
request to approve so we can move forward with all the changes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the Everett Association Paraeducators Collective Bargaining Agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say also, thank you very much for your work on this. And one thing that to me that has come out of this, I know it's a 1-year agreement, is the state is finally waking up to the fact that our paraeducators play an enormous and important role in our schools, and they need to be compensated both financially and work conditions in a way that reflects the work that they do and their importance. So my fingers are crossed, maybe not this section, but that will be the top of their priorities in the next session, and something that I'll look forward to discussing as one of our legislative priorities.
And at the WASDA meeting this weekend, there was a student, he's the head of the Students Association for all the student reps on the board. But he actually spoke to the paras salary adjustments that they might have, and named a para at his school that has really had an impact on him. And so I just think that it is great work that the paras do, and whatever the state can do to help us I'd be very thankful for. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, it is approved. Thank you. And that is our last item of business tonight. So this, I don't have my last sentence, but anyway, this is the January 30th, 2024 special board meeting is now adjourned.